It started with a flash in the sky, something that looked like a falling star but moved the wrong way. The people in the colony of New Terra thought it was just a meteor, but James knew better. He stood outside the mining base with his helmet off, watching the sky as the object tore across the horizon. His heartbeat slowed as his instincts sharpened. He had been a soldier before he was a miner, and something about that light told him war was coming. New Terra was a small human colony on a dry, rocky world. It had no army, only workers and engineers. The air was breathable but thin. Life was hard, but quiet. They sent metals and fuel back to Earth, and no one had bothered them in years. Then the ship came. It was not human. It was dark and smooth like glass and flew without fire or noise. It stopped above the colony without a signal or warning. James grabbed his old rifle from the supply shed. It was a relic from a forgotten war, but it still worked. He didn't wait for orders. He scanned the sky, then the ground. The other miners stayed inside, afraid. The base commander sent a message to Earth, but no reply came. James knew what silence meant. It meant they were alone. The alien ship opened from below, and something fell from it. Not a bomb, not a drone. It was a warrior. She landed hard but stood tall, over 12 feet high. Her armor glowed blue and silver, and her eyes burned like stars. She carried no gun, just a long weapon that looked like a sword mixed with lightning. She walked toward the base alone. James stepped forward. He didn't know why. He should have stayed hidden. But something in her walk, in the way she looked straight at him, made him move. He raised his rifle. She stopped a few feet away. Number. Translator, no words. Only silence between them. Then she pointed her weapon at him, slowly, as if offering a challenge. The ground cracked where she stood. The air shimmered around her. James heard the alarms behind him, but he kept his eyes on her. She didn't attack. She waited. James lowered his rifle and pulled out a steel rod from his belt. Not a weapon, but heavy enough to fight with. He nodded once. Her mouth curled into what looked like a smile. Then she moved. Fast, too fast. She struck with a flash, and James barely blocked it. Sparks flew. The rod bent. He rolled to the side, then struck back. Her armor rang like a bell, but she didn't even flinch. She spun and kicked, sending him sliding back across the dirt. But he got up. Bruised, bleeding, breathing hard. He smiled back at her. Hours passed. The sun began to fall. The fight never stopped. They broke rocks, walls, and tools. People watched from a distance, too scared to interrupt. The alien queen never spoke, but her eyes told stories. James understood. None of it, but he kept fighting, not to win, just to stand his ground. Blow after blow, they pushed each other to the edge. His bones ached. His hands shook. Blood ran down his face. She had not tired. Her breathing was steady, her strikes still sharp. But something changed. She slowed. Not much, but enough. Her sword hummed softer. Her stance loosened. She studied him longer between attacks. He noticed but said nothing. He just swung again with what strength he had left. Then it happened. She dropped her weapon, not by mistake. She placed it gently on the ground. James froze. She raised her hands, palms open. No tricks, no traps. Her chest rose and fell with deep, steady breaths. She stepped closer, and he didn't stop her. Her voice came soft and deep, like the hum of distant engines. He could finally understand her. "You do not yield," she said. "You fight like our best warriors. You do not fall. You do not run. I came to test the humans. I did not expect to." "Find this." James blinked, still breathing hard. "Find what?" he asked. She looked at the red dust on her armor and smiled again. "A reason to stay," she answered. James didn't speak. He just stared at her, confused and tired. She looked around the broken land, the people watching in silence, the sky turning purple with night. "You fought me for 12 hours. She said, "Now I ask you one thing." James wiped blood from his lip and waited. She looked into his eyes and spoke slowly. "Will you stay with me?" He didn't answer right away. His body ached. His world had just changed. But when he looked at her, tall, strong, strange, and calm, something in him whispered yes, not just for peace, not just for duty, but for something deeper, something neither of them fully understood. Yet, Jane stood still, trying to make sense of her words. The air around him felt heavy. His muscles were weak, but his heart beat strong. She had come from the sky, fought like a storm, and now stood before him not as an enemy, but as something else. The alien queen looked at the crowd of humans behind him. They stayed near the broken walls, watching in silence. No one dared step closer. She turned back to James and took one slow step forward. Her armor made no sound. The lights on her chest flickered with soft energy. She raised her hand, not in threat, but in peace. James didn't raise his weapon. He had none left. His steel rod was broken. His body was near collapse. But he didn't feel fear, only confusion and curiosity. "Who are you?" he asked, her head tilted slightly. "I am called Saraxa," she replied, "Queen of the Tharnak Blades, daughter of the Wound Star, chosen of the High Trial." Her voice carried weight but no pride. She looked back at the broken soil where their fight had started. "I came to challenge," she said. "I expected you to fall, to run, to beg. But you did none of these." James frowned. "You came to test us," she nodded. "To judge. To see if your kind were worthy. Many in the stars think humans are weak, soft, undisciplined. I came to know the truth with my own hands." The wind picked up. Dust floated between them. The sun had dipped low, and shadows stretched long. James rubbed his arm, which throbbed from a hard strike. "And what do you think now?" he asked. She stepped closer, her voice calm. "Now I know your kind can stand, that you burn with something we thought lost, that your spirit cannot be broken by power alone." The base commander stepped out from the main building, holding a cum device. His face was pale. "James," he called, "stand back. We don't know what she wants." James didn't move. "She already told me what she wants." Saraxa turned toward the commander and gave a slow nod. "I wish no harm. One wish understanding. And I wish to offer something rare." Everyone stared. James looked at her again. "What do you mean?" She took off her helmet and placed it on the ground. Her face was sharp and beautiful in a fierce, alien way. Her skin shimmered with silver blue patterns. Her eyes held stars. "In our culture," she said, "a warrior who fights without breaking, even in loss, is worthy of honor. I offer you a bond." The miners whispered behind James. He didn't understand the full meaning. "A bond?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "A connection, an alliance. You stood against me when none dared. You fought with skill, not hate, strength, not anger. You reminded me of what we once were. I offer you place beside me, among my people." James lowered his head. The war inside him was not over. He had fought because no one else could. But now, peace stood in front of him with a sword lowered and a hand open. He looked up. "What happens if I say yes?" Saraxa stepped even closer. "You will come with me. You will speak with our elders. You will share your knowledge. You will train, and in turn, be honored as one of us." A child stepped forward from the crowd and looked up at the tall warrior. Saraxa bent her knee and met the girl's eyes. "Are you going to hurt us?" the girl asked. Saraxa shook her head gently. "No, the test is over. You are safe now." James watched that moment and felt something shift in his chest. This was no longer just about survival. It was about connection. The commander walked forward and stopped beside James. "You trust her?" James looked him in the eye. "She could have killed me 10 times. But she didn't. She stopped when I was down. That means something." The commander glanced at Saraxa, then back at James. "Then it's your call." Saraxa stood tall once more. "You have shown honor. If you say no, I will leave in peace. But if you say yes, a new path will open. One that may change both our kinds." James looked at the dirt, the broken tools, the blood on his hands, then raised his head high. "I'll come with you," he said. Saraxa placed her hand on her chest in a gesture of respect. "Then let us begin." A blue light flashed behind her, and a round craft descended from the clouds. It hovered quietly, then lowered itself to the cracked earth. James walked beside her without hesitation. The crowd parted as they passed. No one cheered, no one cried. Only silence and awe. The miner who had once swung tools now walked beside a queen. 2 warriors from different stars, joined by combat, now stepping into something greater than either had known. James didn't know what waited beyond the clouds. He didn't know if peace would last or if danger lay ahead. But he knew this: his life had changed forever, and it started with a battle that ended in something stronger than war. The transport vessel rose smoothly into the sky, leaving the dusty colony behind. James sat beside Saraxa inside the glowing chamber. He felt strange without gravity, without ground beneath his boots. Yet he was calm. The ship was quiet, filled with soft blue lights and smooth metal walls. He looked at her, unsure what came next. Saraxa remained still, eyes closed, hands resting on her knees. She was not meditating, she was listening. James could feel the low hum around them, like a machine thinking. Finally, she opened her eyes. "We are going to the High Fleet," she said, "to meet the Circle of Blades. They must see you with their own eyes." James leaned forward slightly. "And what happens if they don't like me?" Saraxa turned to him. "They will test you, not with weapons, but with words, questions, judgment. If they accept you, you will have voice in our halls. If not, you may still return safely." He nodded. It wasn't a bad deal. But he didn't like the idea of being judged by beings who had never met a human before. He thought about Earth, about the people back home. He wondered what they would say if they saw him now. A miner turned warrior, now sitting in an alien ship beside a queen. The ship entered a massive docking ring in orbit. Dozens of other vessels floated nearby, shaped like blades, claws, and wings. The Tharnak did not build things to look peaceful. Everything they made looked ready for war. James stepped out of the ship and into a hallway of black stone and glowing patterns. Guards waited on both sides. They wore armor different from Saraxa's, thicker, older. Their weapons were locked to their arms. None of them spoke. One of them stepped forward and handed Saraxa a long banner made of silver threads. She took it and turned to James. "This marks you as tested. They will not strike unless you strike first." James gave a short nod. "Good to know." They walked together through the halls. Murals covered the walls, paintings of great battles, strange beasts, and warriors standing atop mountains. Some of them had more than 2 arms, some looked like machines. All of them looked like they had earned their place. They reached a wide chamber shaped like a circle. Seats rose in rings around them. Figures stood at each level, silent, armored, watching. Saraxa led James to the center. "You stand before the Circle of Blades," she said aloud. "You have earned this moment." One of the figures stepped forward. His armor was white and gold, and his eyes burned yellow. He spoke in a voice like thunder. "You are the human who fought our queen for 12 hours. Explain yourself." James straightened his back. "She came to our world. I stood up. I didn't know who she was. I only knew we had no one else to stop her." Another figure stepped forward, taller than the first. "Her armor was made of dark crystal. You did not run. You fought with honor." But what do you seek now? James took a breath. I didn't ask to come here, but I won't turn away. If there's a chance for peace between us, I'll take it. If there's a chance to learn, I'll do that too. Murmurs spread through the circle. One of them raised a hand. You speak plainly. That is rare among warriors. Tell us this. Why did you not surrender when you were outmatched? James looked at Saraxa, then back at the circle. Because surrender is the end. And I believed there was still something I could do. The circle went silent. Saraxa stepped forward and raised the silver banner. He fought without fear. He chose honor over safety. I asked that he be allowed to walk among us as one who has earned his place. The lead figure raised his arm slowly. The vote must be taken. The old ways demand it. Each figure placed a hand over their chest. One by one, they turned their hands outward. It was a sign of acceptance. Every single one of them turned their hand. The hall glowed with new light. James felt the pressure in his chest lift. Saraxa looked at him and gave a small nod. You are now part of our path. From this day forward, you walk among warriors. Guards stepped forward, but not to restrain him. They offered him new armor, shaped to his size, painted in the colors of the Tharnak. James touched the chestplate. It was heavier than anything he had worn, but it felt right. He turned to Saraxa. Now what? She smiled. Now you begin the second trial. You train as one of us. The chamber doors opened behind them. Light poured in, not from the ship, but from a chamber full of weapons and warriors. Some trained with blades, some with fire, some with strange machines. James took his first step into the unknown, not as a miner, not even as a guest, but as a warrior in training. His journey had changed again. He had proven himself in battle. Now he had to prove he belonged, not with strength, but with heart. Not with fear, but with fire. And deep inside, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. James stepped into the training grounds of the Tharnak, wearing the new armor they had given him. The armor was smooth and dark, with silver lines that glowed softly. Under the alien sun, it was heavier than anything he had ever worn, but it fit him perfectly. Around him, warriors moved like shadows, practicing strikes, dodges, and forms that looked like dances of war. The air smelled of metal and smoke. Strange machines floated nearby, watching and scanning. One of the trainers approached James. She had 4 arms, each holding a different weapon. Her voice was sharp. You are the human. You must earn your place with blood, sweat, and thought. We do not keep those who cannot grow. James nodded. I'm ready. She gave him a blunt staff. No blades, no energy. Just solid weight. Show me how you move. James remembered old drills from Earth. He took his stance and swung. She blocked easily. He struck again. She twisted past him. Blow after blow. He failed to land a hit. Others gathered around. Some laughed softly. Others just watched. Saraxa appeared near the edge, saying nothing. The trainer spun and knocked James to the ground. His armor clanked. He groaned but stood up. Again, he said. The trainer's eyes narrowed. She nodded. Good. Paying as a teacher. Days passed. James trained with different masters. Some were fast, some were strong, some were strange. One used sound as a weapon. Another fought blindfolded. Each day he bled. Each night he healed. His muscles grew harder. His reflexes sharpened. He began to see patterns in their movements. He learned their ways, but never forgot his own. He taught them too. He showed them how humans moved. How they used surprise. How they used simple tools to create traps. Some of the Tharnak began to copy him. Saraxa watched this quietly, speaking little, but when they were alone, she asked questions. Why do humans fight in such a wild way? He smiled. Because we fight to survive, not for honor. Not for glory. Just to live another day. One evening, Syraxa took James to a private hall deep inside the ship. The walls were covered in weapons of ancient design. "This place," she said, "belongs to those who have passed the trial of dual flame. It is the final test of acceptance. Only 2 warriors at a time may enter. No armor, no weapons. Only skill." James stared at the stone floor. "You want me to fight again?" Syraxa shook her head. "I want you to understand why we fight. Not all battles are about power. Some are about truth. Tomorrow you will face one of our elders. If you lose, it is no shame. But if you win, you become more than accepted. You become one of us." James didn't sleep that night. He sat in silence, thinking about everything. The colony, the duel, the ship, the people he had left behind. He didn't know what the future held. But he knew one thing: he would not back down. The next morning, he stood in the ring of stone. The elder he was to face entered with slow, careful steps. He looked fragile, but his eyes held lightning. "You are the outsider," the elder said. James nodded, "Yes." The elder dropped his cloak and raised his hands. "Then show me what burns inside you." They circled each other. No one spoke. The room was silent except for their breaths. The elder struck first. James dodged, then countered. His punch was caught. He was flipped to the ground. He rose, struck again, and again. Each time, the elder moved like wind, soft but unshakable. Then James saw it. The elder's moves were slow in the beginning, predictable, but they hid the real attacks that came after. James shifted his stance, then struck at the second movement. This time the elder grunted. James had found the rhythm. The fight lasted for hours. Sweat poured down James's face. The elder's strikes grew sharper, but James adapted. His training, his pain, his will, they all came together. He blocked a spinning kick, slid under a sweeping arm, and struck the elder's chest with a hard palm. The elder stepped back. He placed one hand on his chest, then smiled. "You have done it. You held your flame through pain and pressure. You fought with heart, not hate." He bowed low. James bowed back. The door opened, and the circle of blades entered. Syraxa stepped forward and placed her hand on James's shoulder. "From this moment, you are no longer outsider. You are now Blade Walker, a title of those who earned their name through struggle and growth." A roar filled the hall. The warriors pounded their chests, saluting him. James stood tall, body shaking, but spirit burning. He had come from dirt and stone. Now he stood in halls of steel and fire, respected not for who he was, but for who he had become. The elder approached again and whispered, "But your true trial has not begun. Be ready. The stars are not quiet, and shadows move in places unseen." James didn't know what those words meant, but he felt their weight. Peace was not forever. Challenges were not finished. But for now, he had won something no weapon could buy: honor among those who once saw him as nothing. The days after his final trial passed in a strange rhythm. James no longer trained as a student. He now trained beside the others, as one of them. The Tharnak warriors accepted him not with cheers, but with respect. They nodded when he passed. They listened when he spoke. They watched how he moved, how he thought, how he fought, but peace did not last long. One evening, alarms rang through the fleet. Red lights blinked across every hall. Voices called out in the Tharnak tongue. James ran toward the command deck. Syraxa was already there, staring at the glowing map. "A fleet approaches," she said. "Unknown design, no signals, no warning." James studied the display. The ships moved in formation, but their shape was unlike anything he had seen. Long and thin, like needles of black glass. "Do you know who they are?" he asked. Syraxa shook her head. "No, but they come with weapons hot. And they aim for US." The circle of blades appeared on the main screen. "We must act quickly." said the elder in gold and white. They approach with purpose. They did not answer our calls. They do not respect our space. Saraxa turned to James. You have faced the unknown before. What do you feel now? James stared at the screen. I feel we're being hunted. The fleet moved into formation. Defense lines activated. Drones circled the main ship. Pilots jumped into small craft. The Tharnak did not waste time. James watched as the alien ships closed the distance. Still, no communication came, no threat, no demand. Just silent movement through cold space. Then the attack began. Without warning, the enemy ships opened fire. Beams of red light sliced through the outer drones. Explosions bloomed in the void. The Tharnak returned fire. Fighters launched. Shields flared. James stood at the side of the room, fists clenched. He wasn't a pilot. He wasn't a commander. But he felt the pull to act. Saraxa stepped beside him. Come, there is something you must see. She led him down into the core of the flagship. They passed warriors in armor, engineers at their stations, and rooms filled with strange machines humming with light. Finally, they entered a dark chamber where something massive rested behind a wall of energy. It was a weapon. But not a normal one. It looked alive. Like a beast asleep in a cage of light. What is that? James asked. Saraxa's eyes stayed fixed on it. It is called the Heart Fang, a weapon of last resort. It feeds on the will of its user. It destroys not just ships, but entire memories. Whole histories can vanish in one strike. James stepped back. You've never used it? Saraxa nodded. Never, because once used, it leaves a wound in space itself. It burns everything around it, including us. But if the enemy breaks our lines, we may have no choice. They returned to the command deck. The battle was growing worse. Tharnak ships exploded one after another. Enemy vessels were fast and silent. No pilots had been seen. They are not crewed, one of the commanders said. They are ghosts. Machines without heart. James studied the patterns. He noticed something strange. The enemy ships never targeted Saraxa's vessel directly. They struck the outer ships, cutting the ring of defense. They want to isolate us, he said, not destroy everything. Just weaken the center. Saraxa looked at him. Then we must strike their mind. If they have one. James took a deep breath. Let me lead a team. Small, fast, quiet. We board one of those things. We find the core, and we end it from inside. The room fell silent. The idea was madness. But Saraxa nodded. Take 3. Choose well. I will buy you time. James selected 3 warriors. One was the blind fighter who taught him focus. One was a silent blade user who could move like wind. The last was a drone handler with quick hands and quicker thoughts. They launched in a stealth pod, shielded from scans, moving under the cover of the debris field. As they neared the enemy ship, James saw no lights. No ports, no signs of life. Just a black shell that absorbed all color. They landed on its side and cut their way in. Inside, the walls were smooth and pulsing with red light. The air felt heavy, no crew, no voices. Only the low sound of distant, cold power. They moved through the halls, marking turns. The blind warrior felt the vibrations and pointed them forward. Soon they reached a chamber filled with cables like roots. In the center was a black crystal, humming with energy. James stepped closer. This is it, he whispered. This is their heart. The blade user nodded. We must strike all at once. Together, each of them took a position. On James's signal, they hit the crystal with everything they had. Light burst out in waves. The ground shook. The ship screamed, not in sound, but in pressure. As if space itself pushed back, James felt his chest burn. They had started something they couldn't stop. The crystal cracked, then shattered. Red light faded. Silence returned. The enemy ship went dark, The moment the crystal shattered, everything changed. The lights inside the enemy ship blinked. Once, then died. The walls stopped pulsing. The pressure in the air vanished. James stood still, staring at the place where the crystal had been. Nothing remained but broken shards floating in silence. The team exchanged looks. No alarms went off. No defenses activated. It was like the ship had lost its soul. The blind warrior pressed her hand against the wall. "It no longer lives," she said. "We must leave before its shell collapses." James nodded. Back to the pod. Naomi, they ran through the dark halls. The drone handler sent a signal to the stealth pod, and the walls began to vibrate. Small cracks spread along the floor. Behind them, black mist leaked from the broken chambers. The ship was dying. Piece by piece, it was falling apart. They reached the pod and launched just as the ship broke in two. The explosion sent pieces flying, but the pod slipped past the debris. James looked back and saw the other enemy ships faltering. Some turned away, some drifted with no control. "We hit their nerve center," he said. They were all linked. Back on Syrax's ship, cheers broke out across the fleet. The red lights faded. The enemy attack had stopped. The remaining ships vanished into warp without a trace. The threat was gone, at least for now. James and his team returned to the main deck, where Syraxa waited in silence. She walked up to James and raised her hand. "You did more than strike the enemy," she said. "You showed courage beyond duty. You moved not as a guest, but as one of us." James nodded slowly. "We all acted as one. That's what made it work." The blind warrior placed her hand on her chest. "He led with fire. We followed because he burned with purpose." The circle of blades appeared again, this time not in judgment, but in honor. "The enemy that came today was not from any known system," said the Golden Elder. "They left no name, no symbol, only silence. But you gave them an answer they will not forget. Ceremonies were not common among the Tharnak. They did not sing, they did not dance, but they gathered in their own way." They circled James and his team in a ring of warriors, holding blades above their heads. It was a mark of great respect. One warrior stepped forward and handed James a small object, an iron crest shaped like a burning star. "This is the flame sign," Syraxa explained. "It is given to those who bring light into dark times. Few carry it. Fewer still earn it in war." James looked at it, then closed his hand around it. "I didn't come here to earn anything. I only did what had to be done." Later, as the fleet repaired itself and scanned the edge of space, James found a quiet place near the viewing deck. Stars stretched forever across the black sky. He had seen so much, changed so much, but one question still burned in his chest. He turned as Syraxa joined him. "They were machines," he said. "But who sent them? Why did they come for you?" Syraxa folded her arms. "Long ago, we broke ties with a great power. A race that believed in control through silence. We chose freedom. They chose perfection. I thought they had vanished. But perhaps they watched from the dark." James turned back to the stars. "They'll return," Syraxa nodded. "Yes, but next time we will be ready. Together." There was a long pause between them. Then Syraxa said softly, "When I came to your world, I thought I came to test a species. But it was I who was tested. By you." He looked at her, eyes steady. "And what did you find?" She smiled slightly. "That strength comes not from size or speed, but from fire within. And in you, I saw it burn brighter than anything I've ever known." Her voice grew quiet. "I brought you here as a challenge. I never thought you would become something more." James lowered his head. "I never planned any of this. I just wanted to protect what I could." Syraxa stepped closer. "Then stay. Not as warrior, not as guest, but as something more." James felt his heart beat louder. "What do you mean?" She looked into his eyes. I ask not with duty. I ask with truth. Will you stay with me? He didn't speak right away. The silence between them was full, not empty. Around them, stars burned. Ships moved. Life continued. But here, in this moment, there was only one choice to make. And in his heart he already knew the answer. He reached out, placed the flame sign into her hand and said, I will stay. Not because I must, but because I want to. Her fingers closed around it. Her eyes glowed with something deeper than honor. Then you are no longer just a warrior. You are part of what we build next. Together, they stood at the edge of the stars. Behind them was war. Ahead of them was mystery. But between them stood something neither of them had expected. A bond formed in fire. A promise born in battle. A future shaped by two hearts, once strangers, now bound by choice. The stars were calm again, but the fleet remained alert. After the battle, the Tharnak did not return to rest. They rebuilt. They studied. They trained harder. James walked the long metal corridors with new eyes. He was no longer a visitor. The warriors saluted him not out of formality, but from respect. Even the old trainers now called him by name. Every day, he learned more of their history. The Tharnak were not always conquerors. Long ago, they had been scattered tribes, ruled by chaos and rival bloodlines. Then came the Great Uniting, when a single warrior queen had challenged the 10 strongest clans and defeated them all. Since then, the trial by combat had remained their sacred way. Syraxa invited James into the royal archive, a chamber only few were allowed to enter. The walls held carvings older than the stars. We came from fire, she said, but we were shaped by pain. For every victory, we paid a heavy price. James looked at the images of burning cities, of fallen warriors, of shattered planets. And now, he asked, what do you want to become? Syraxa placed her hand on a carving of 2 beings, one Tharnak and one human standing side by side. Weapons down, hands joined. Something more, she said. Not just feared, not just strong, but wise, united. James turned toward her. That's a harder path than war, she nodded. But the only one worth walking now. That night, a message arrived. A small human research ship entered the sector. Its crew had picked up signals from the battle weeks ago and came to investigate. James listened to the transmission. The voice was familiar. It was Captain Lane, someone he had once worked under before. Transferring to New Terra. We are peaceful. We request contact with the unknown fleet. James looked at Syraxa. If they see your warships, they'll panic. Syraxa nodded. Then we meet them differently. Together, they boarded a diplomatic vessel with no weapons, only light shields. James wore ceremonial robes, dark red with silver edges. Syraxa left her armor behind and wore a soft blue garment, marked with the symbols of peace. The meeting took place in open space, between the Tharnak vessel and the small human ship. James stepped onto the connecting bridge first. Captain Lane's face appeared through the glass. Her eyes widened in shock. James, is that really you? James smiled. Yes, and it's a long story. When the doors opened, the air between the 2 crews felt thick with tension. The humans were armed. The Tharnak were not. James raised both hands. They're not here to harm. They came because I asked them. 2. Lane stepped forward. You vanished. Then we heard about a sky battle. What happened to you? He told her everything. The duel, the challenge, the fleet, the enemy machines, the bond. He spoke with honesty, leaving nothing out. At first, the human crew looked at Syraxa with doubt, but her calm voice and open hands began to melt their fear. She spoke not as a queen, but as someone who had learned something new. Lane looked at them both. So what now? What do you want from us? James looked her in the eyes. A meeting between Earth and the Tharnak. A chance to talk before More fighting happens. We have to try something new. Lane stayed silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. I'll send the message. But they may not answer kindly. Syraxa placed her hand on James's shoulder. Even one voice can start a storm. And even storms can change the sky. Back on the Tharnak vessel, the circle of blades debated through the night. Some were against contact. Others saw the future James and Syraxa now stood for. In the end, the vote passed. They would open the gate to dialogue. Weeks passed. A special meeting was set. Earth agreed to send envoys. The location was chosen, a neutral station near a dying star. It was old, broken, left behind by earlier wars. But for this purpose it would do. James walked the halls of that station, with Syraxa beside him. Flags of both worlds hung from the walls. The human envoys arrived with wide eyes and guarded hearts. Some were generals, some were scientists, some were afraid. The Tharnak greeted them with the flame gesture, one hand over the chest, the other behind the back. A symbol of strength kept in peace. James stood between both groups and spoke first. We come from fire, but fire can burn or warm. We have seen both. We have chosen which one we want to become. Syraxa stepped forward next. We offer no demands. Only a table, only a seat. Only the chance to know each other before shadows come again. The room stayed silent for a long time. Then one human stepped forward. A historian, not a soldier. He reached out his hand. Syraxa looked at it, then took it gently. The room let out a breath. A moment had passed, quiet but powerful. The first bond had been made not by force, but by will. James watched from the center. His journey had started with a duel, with fire and pain. But now he stood in a place where words replaced weapons. And in that silence, something new was born. The station near the dying star became more than a meeting place. It became a symbol. Every day, more voices joined the table. Not just Tharnak and humans, but others too, smaller species, lost traders, hidden watchers from forgotten sectors. What began as a duel between two warriors now echoed across the stars as a call for change. James moved through the station like a bridge between worlds. He knew how to speak to humans with caution and to Tharnak with respect. When tempers rose, he reminded them of the silence between battles. When pride flared, he reminded them of what they had survived together. He was no longer a visitor. He was now a keeper of peace. Syraxa remained beside him. Not as queen above, but as equal beside. She no longer led with command. She led by example. She sat in every meeting, listened to every voice, and answered only when the time was right. Her power came not from her armor, but from the calm she carried in rooms filled with fire. The talks were hard. Some humans still feared what had happened. Some Tharnak still believed strength was the only language others respected. But slow steps became strong ones. They signed agreements, shared maps, offered trade, trained together in mixed teams. They didn't always agree, but they kept talking. One day, James received a message from Earth's Council. They wanted him to return, not to report, not to fight, but to speak, to tell the story of what had happened. We want to understand how it began, the message said. Syraxa looked at him. Will you go? James thought carefully. Then he nodded. Yes, but not alone. They traveled in a ship shaped by both styles, half human steel, half Tharnak crystal. When they landed on Earth, the people stared in silence. Some with wonder, some with fear, but no one raised a weapon. They walked through the capital side by side. The path was long, the air different, but James felt no distance. Inside the grand hall, leaders and watchers sat in silence. James stepped forward. I was a miner, I had no rank. I had no title, but when danger came, I stood, not to win, not to conquer, but to protect. What came after was not planned. It was chosen. Chosen again and again, through pain and chance. And will, Syraxis spoke next. We did not come in peace. We came to test, but we found something stronger than resistance. We found a fire that does not die. We found a people who do not kneel and who do not crush. We offer our hand, not because we are weak, but because we see your strength. The hall remained quiet for a long time. Then slowly one leader rose, then another, then another. One by one, they offered words of welcome. The motion was passed. Earth and the Tharnak would begin an official alliance. Not one of control, but of shared will. Months passed. The station at the dying star grew into something new. A home, a place of learning, a place of trial. Warriors trained beside scholars. Children of different species learned together. New ships were built not for war, but for search and study. What once began in fire now moved forward in light. James became more than a voice. He became a name others followed. He led missions into unclaimed space. He negotiated border tensions. He even helped design new ships, combining Tharnak speed with human stability. But at night, he always returned to one place, Syrax's side. Their bond deepened. Not through grand gestures, but through time, through trust, through the quiet moments between storms. They never needed to speak promises. Their choice had already been made, sealed not by words, but by the fight they survived together. One evening, as they stood beneath the observation dome, Syraxa reached for his hand. "There is one more trial," she said. "One not found in combat or council." James looked at her. "What is it?" She smiled. "To build something that lasts." James held her hand tighter. "Then let's start now." They built a new hall, one not for warriors, but for peacemakers. A hall where no weapons could enter. A hall made of earthstone and Tharnak crystal, joined together by hands from both worlds. Inside that hall, no flags were raised, only shared symbols, only shared hopes. The first treaty was signed there, then the second, then the third. Over time, conflict did not vanish, but it changed. It became something that could be faced without fear, without blades. Because the ones who had fought hardest had also chosen to lead with open hands. Years later, a child walked through the hall, pointing at a statue. It showed a tall alien queen and a human warrior standing side by side, weapons lowered, heads. "Hi, who were they?" the child asked. The guide smiled. "They were the ones who didn't back down. And when the stars were filled with fire, they chose to build instead of burn."